Welcome into the JP and Hack Show, part of the Field of 12 Media Network, sponsored by Bet Rivers. My guy, Christian Hackenberg, former Penn State quarterback. As always, joining the show, I am merely Joshua Perry, made a couple tackles at The Ohio State University. Hack, we're doing another late show. Do you have anything in your cup right now?
Yeah, I got some beers and some action on, so all is well. You know, I figured some beers and action would be sometimes a little bit more appetizing than red eyes and coffee in the morning. So
okay, yeah, no, the red eyes and coffee is a real thing. I feel like we're putting in entirely too much work in the morning. So we need to talk to whoever that is to get that situated. I'm flipping on the action right now. I actually haven't, participated in a lot of weeknight football, although there have been some Thursday night games that were intriguing. There was one that was postponed a couple of weeks ago I tuned into, but I'm excited we get to do this in the evening. I have a little Jefferson's Reserve almost to the end of the bottle. I don't have any of those fancy spherical ice cubes, which I need to get on because these dilute way too quickly. But cheers, get the first one down.
Yes, sir.
But this past weekend I thought was really illuminating in a lot of ways. And the game that everybody's probably talking about is, the top 15 matchup that took place between Ohio State and Penn State. I know obviously you and I, we got some feelings about that, our respective alma maters, but the Michigan game I thought was pretty illuminating too against Michigan State for a number of reasons. We'll obviously dive into the X's and O's of that. I wanted to get your thoughts as well about what happened after the game in the tunnel. Certainly a sight that we don't want to see in college football, but James Franklin had talked about it a few weeks ago. We saw one of the most horrific and egregious sights in that tunnel after the game, and not to dissect it, but I just want to get kind of a 30,000 foot view from you. But let's recap some of these scores. We'll recap some of the games, and then we'll talk a little bit about what happened over the weekend. Starting with Ohio State with the come-from-behind victory against Penn State, 44-31 was the final score of that one. Minnesota absolutely boat raced Rutgers, and I didn't think that this game was going to get out of hand the way that it did. I thought Rutgers was going to be able to hold up way better against the run, but the score of that one was 31-0. Iowa 33, Northwestern 13. I mean, we saw Tom Brady back there playing quarterback for Iowa, it seems. Western defense is going to have his damn hands full against Ohio State this week. Illinois 26, Nebraska 9. I did not put this as a recap game, but I do want to get your thoughts on just the way that Illinois was able to get a victory. No thoughts?
At this point in time, I think Illinois deserved the respect. They've put together enough great games and game plans, both as players and coaches, to where now I think the expectation for them is to continue to win on that on the west side right now for me. So, Nebraska, I don't really care who it is on the west. Like Illinois, we've talked about it. I think Illinois controls their own destiny here. So, and again, they've done enough for me at this point to it doesn't surprise me, I guess is what I'm getting at. Long story short.
No, I'm with you. It's not surprising. I like what you said about the game plan though. And we've talked about these coordinators that Brett Bielema has hired there. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. And for Illinois to come out in the second half, I believe they limited Nebraska to 29 total yards in the second half of that game. Like, I think that is indicative of things that really good football teams do. You come out, you play well in the first half, you make adjustments, and you execute the game plan to perfection, which it seems like they do week in and week out.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's what they know they have to do too. You know what I mean? Yes. Like, they're not going to come out and just blow people away with thoroughbreds outside. They got good players, but you got to put those good players in really good positions to be successful over and over again, and they do that.
No doubt. And then the nightcap from last week, Michigan 29, Michigan State 7. Rivalry game, obviously, tempers flared up. We'll cover that in just a little bit, but wanted to recap probably the biggest game of the weekend. Again, Ohio State 44, Penn State 31. This one was super intriguing to me because I thought it was a very uneven game. You have Ohio State jumping out to a 10-0 lead with 2:48 left in the first quarter. And then by 9:26 left in the fourth, Penn State had a 21-16 lead in that game. Now, I wasn't there. I don't think you were there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I wasn't.
But I knew some folks that were at that game. They said the environment was absolutely out of control. Penn State fans were loud and rowdy like they typically are. Again, for my money and from what I've seen of college football, it's the best environment out there, specifically the whiteout, but they said this game was rocking as well. But OSU comes out and they do this avalanche of points like they've done in the past. I'm going to run through kind of what happened in that game. So Trevion Henderson has a 41-yard run, puts Ohio State up 23-21. Then CJ Stroud to Cade Stover just a few plays later, 24-yard touchdown. And now you're looking at a 30-21 game. Penn State answered with the field goal, but then Ohio State comes right back. Trevion Henderson again for a 7-yard touchdown run. And now you're at 37-24. And then you get the JT Tuimoloau pick six to make it 44-24. With 2:42 left. A 20-point lead explodes like that with 2:42 left in the game. In about 6 minutes of game time, Ohio State put up 28 points in that fourth quarter. Yeah. I mean, it's something that is so demoralizing. If you're the opposing team, I don't even know how you reconcile with the fact that Ohio State has the ability to do this.
It's what makes them probably the most dangerous team in college football, because they're a complete football team. Defensively, we've hammered this point, and I continue to hammer this point. I think they are leaps and bounds better than they were last year, and they're getting back to when you were there. I think in terms of how they play as a group, as a unit, the expectation. I think that has gone since. I mean, really, the Bosa's left. It's there, but it's not. It wasn't showing up. It wasn't showing up on the tape. It's starting to show back up on the tape, and when you got an offense like that just continues to support them, it's a cage beast, man. It's just a matter of time. Like you can dam up the river as long as you want and try as hard as you want with it, but eventually it's just going to keep coming, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's kind of what it was. I mean, even again, propensity to run the football, even when it's not working, and then it pops for 41. And then that starts a whole freaking avalanche to your point of things that happen that go their way. They get the strip sack. Freaking the guy who just played, JT played, I think it was the best defensive performance I've ever seen.
You can make an argument.
In
I don't
college
know if
football
I've seen a better
ever.
one. Yep.
Insane. Yep. Single-handed performance. And then right back, plus territory, turn around, throw a shot play. And it wasn't even like it wasn't monotonous. I mean, it was like, to your point, and you laid it out. Yeah. It was 41-yard run, strip sack, recovery, 25-yard touchdown pass. Yep. And then it's three, to your point, it's like three things. You're like, fuck, dude, 14-point swing. It's just really hard to when you have a complete team that's that dangerous and can play at that pace and score at that pace. Like, I think the only other team that could probably do it offensively is Tennessee.
I agree with that statement 100%. And Ohio State has they've shown the ability that they will make teams play a full 4 quarters. And I think that's really important, especially as you get toward the end of the year, that you can have this type of firepower. I think a lot of Ohio State fans would like to see more consistency out of this team in between, but it's hard to complain when you know that you can outlast teams in the fourth quarter. And I've talked to Ryan Day twice this year in professional capacity, getting ready to do games. And one of the things that he has talked about is competitive stamina, this idea that when the game gets to the fourth quarter and you're down and things are gritty and it doesn't feel like it's going your way, you're in enemy territory, that you can do exactly what they did. And I love what you said about the run game too, because this was an unimpressive rushing performance out of Ohio State. Pull up the stats here. They had 98 rushing yards. A lot of people would say it's a bad performance. I tend to agree with that. But they averaged almost 9 yards per carry in the fourth quarter. And I said this on Big Ten Network the other day, and our host Dave Revson pushed back, and he was like, yeah, you had a 40-yard touchdown run in there. And I said, but that matters because they weren't doing that at the beginning of the game. They come in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden you can run the ball for 2 touchdowns when they said that the run game isn't working. That's an important factor because in the gotta-have-it situations, those guys made plays when they couldn't all day long. And I think it's troubling in one regard. I think it's also refreshing to see that they don't get away from it, even though it's not working.
Right. And I think to your point, and not just to get some coverage too of Penn State. I think this has been James, that complete. What was the phrase you said? Stamina. What did you say?
Stamina.
Competitive stamina that last 4 quarters. I think that's been James Franklin's biggest Achilles heel, especially when it comes to Ohio State. During his tenure at Penn State, they got it one time in a whiteout, but they had Ohio State on the ropes, I think twice when Trace and Saquon were there.
Yes.
And now again this year had them on the ropes, and they just had to finish, and they couldn't quite finish. And I think that's the difference. You feed off the environment, like you said. That's obviously going to play a massive factor in it.
Always does.
It always does. But that's just from the Penn State side of things. Like, that's what's really frustrating about this is you have a chance to really bounce back after getting, just a piss poor performance that you put on up at Michigan in Ann Arbor. And, you get a chance to finish this game and you can't quite do it. And that's what's frustrating, I think, as Nittany Lion fans, and just something that we've seen now.
Yeah.
It's more than, we'll get them next time. It's happened 3, 4, 5 times now. And it's like, that's becoming more of who you are than trying to figure out what it is. You are who you are at this point in time. So,
I think that's it's profound when you phrase it in those terms, because I can remember the games that you're talking about when Ohio State's been on the ropes and they just haven't been able to get the job done. And I do tend to believe that there comes a certain tipping point where you have to ask the question, are we going to be able to get over this hump? And you can give it more time, and there's been enough time for that to happen. But I also do believe that there were a lot of things in this game to take away that Penn State did that shows that the gap may be getting a lot tighter. And I'm going to do a comparison here, and then we'll get some real Penn State flavor, because I think that they deserve to, they deserve some recognition for this performance. But Penn State was more efficient on third downs. They had less yardage to go on third downs. They were better in power rushes, and those are runs with 2 or less to go that convert for a first down or a touchdown. They only had 3 runs stuffed the whole game. Stuffed runs are 0 or negative yardage runs. Compare that to OSU's 10 stuffed runs. Ohio State also got their ass kicked on the edges offensively. They were trying to throw those screens. I thought it personally was a bad game plan, but that secondary for Penn State was not bullshitting at all. They came out there physical, fast, and attacking. Not even Cade Stover, the tight end, could block those guys, and I thought that was really impressive. But the biggest difference in this game to me was that Ohio State took the football away 4 times, and they did not give the football away at all. And that led to a really efficient fourth quarter. They kept it manageable until they could get to a place to blow it out. But you look at this game, and a lot of it was lopsided to Penn State in the way that they played. And to get to Sean Clifford, who I think both of us appreciate who he has been, to me, a lot of Penn State folks are ready to move on from Sean Clifford. I'll put his game into perspective here. 68% completion, 371 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I cannot call the turnovers that happened, except for just one of them, his fault. The one that he threw to JT Tuimoloau.
He double clutched the check down. The check down. Like, at that point, he's played enough football. Once he knows it's not there, he didn't trust it.
You can't do it.
Put your head down and get to the line of scrimmage and get what you can get. Like, you can't, to your point, you can't do that one. The other ones,
freak plays.
The media is out there and fans will sit there and see it. But you and I being in the locker room and me having thrown my fair share of those ones, it's like, you're kind of like, motherfucker. Because it's just one of those things where freaky play, dude tips it up. Who knows what's going to happen at that point in time? Some guys, those balls always seem to hit the ground. Sometimes they just always seem to find someone else's hands. And Ohio State, was advantageous with it. But again, you can't put those on Clifford.
Dude,
sorry
I've
to take your thunder there.
No, it's perfect. I'm glad you said it, because you've been that guy before. And I've been in the film room on the other side where I'm like, holy shit, man, we probably shouldn't have gotten some of these breaks that we got in the game. They had the tip, and JT did a great job of getting his hands up. And then his fucking buddy over there, Zach Harrison's on the other side to reel it in. That is a great play. We mentioned the one that Cliff should not have thrown. And I still think that JT had to make a great play to actually reel it in. He went down by his ankles to basically scoop it off of the ground. A lot of guys, defensive backs, aren't making that football play. It was huge. The strip sack, I mean, the freaking tackle got walked back, and then JT just puts a hand out there hoping that he can swipe at the ball and he gets it. What are the chances of that happening? And then the one where the pick six, JT has to go down to defend his legs on a cut block because it was a screen. And then he gets his hands back up and just picks it out of the air. I don't know any defensive linemen outside of him that are making that play in college football right now. So
for sure.
All the turnovers, it looks bad. And if you're just reading stat lines, you say that this guy is tired and he can't play football. I would make the argument that if Sean Clifford did not play the type of game that he played, Penn State would not have even been close to keeping that thing manageable in the fourth quarter.
No, 100%. And I think he was monumental for that because he's been there. And that's what you got, though, because two of those turnovers were really early in the game, ultimately led to the 10-0 lead. And he shook it off, calmed everything down. Yurcich started running the football, and I was really impressed with the way they ran the football against Ohio State. I thought they were going to struggle a little bit more than they did, and they didn't. They were able to find creative ways to get it. It was was really effective, and it served its purpose. Ran the football, put Cliff in really good situations, got some easy completions, and then he started rolling. So and then you have a couple of those real nice explosive plays. Parker Washington, kind of catching a little key hitch thing out there and then bouncing off two guys and taking it.
Zero, man. And you make those two guys miss, and then here we're 88 and out the gate. That's a great play.
But just getting some of those things under his belt. You have a veteran guy like that. I don't know how a young guy would have reacted in that situation. It's just it's too tough to tell. And you living in a world of hypotheticals, you can't really do that at that. You could have went out there.
We know about how you like the world of hypotheticals. I mean, you live in it when we're doing this bullshit, and then you don't live in it when you're actually in the real world. I mean, for sure, two different guys basically. The Parker Washington play. Yeah, you are. The Parker Washington play was actually. It was really interesting because I'm sitting in the green room watching the game over at BTN. And my initial thoughts when I saw the defensive alignment is that defense looks really flat. And so what that means for people who aren't like super in the weeds on football, they had their defensive line, and then they had basically a second level. They had so many guys walked up and there was nobody deep. We used to call that no deep. Just me as a stupid ass defensive guy, just say, defense looks flat. And so I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, if they can connect and one guy misses a tackle, this could spring. And that's literally the situation. They had two guys in position to make the tackle, and neither one of them could do it. And that is the other end of this Jim Knowles defense that gives me a little bit of heartburn is you get those plays, man, where you're being really aggressive. You want to go zero coverage. It's all out pressure. There is no middle of the field safety to make you correct. I mean, you better hope that your guys got their tough guy, big boy Gutchies on, or else it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, but here's the other side of that coin, though, Josh, and you know this. It doesn't matter because they're going to hit home. They've turned the ball over 10 times in the last 2 weeks, or something like that. They're gonna get theirs. And at the end of the day, if you get got once or twice, the firepower they got on offense, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think that offense has so much more confidence in the defense this year than they did last year, and I think it's just one of those things where like I'm all right with them being aggressive. You don't want it to happen. Can't happen. You know that's what they're being told, and you and I both know that. But if it does, it's kind of like, we'll get them now. It's our turn now. You know what I mean? Like we'll get that back. And then they've obviously made up for it after that with a couple of the plays that they had defensively. So yeah, I know what you're saying there. I know what you're saying, but I'm really not worried about these guys. Like I thought it was very impressive.
But these are how deep the scars are for me. And then we'll get off of this game as an Ohio State fan watching the last 2 years of defense. When I was calling games, I got the opportunity to talk to the coaching staff and some players. So I asked Jim Knowles about, the origins of his defense and the philosophy. And then I asked him because I had watched tape of Oklahoma State when he was there, and they would just be cutting guys loose, but they would get the pressure. They'd turn the football over and it didn't matter. And I said, Coach, I'm like, this is aggressive. I'm like, the guy's going to be running free in the back end. I'm like, how do you reconcile with that as a coordinator? And he said, well, typically in my system, we can allow 5 explosive passes because they typically come through the air, 5 explosive passes per game and still be in a good position to win the football game. Then he looks at me and he says, I don't tell my players this, but with our offense, we can allow 7 of these plays to happen in a game, and we're still probably going to win the football game, going back to this explosive offense that you mentioned. Now I go to the stat sheet because I'm stupid and I can't think about this stuff myself. And I go to the big plays tab. Penn State, 7 explosive passes, 226 yards gained, right? So the literal game plan for this defense, we'll give you a few, but also we might take the football away 4 times and we'll be perfectly fine. And that is the world that he lives in. And it's been hard for me to adjust to as somebody who watches Ohio State as closely as I do and watch what the defense looked like for the last 2 years. But in his mad scientist, evil genius mind, this is okay. This is what works.
Yeah. Yeah, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
You'll get there. You'll adjust. You'll get there, bud.
Yeah, I got to be less involved in this shit. That's the problem. All right, we'll talk about this Michigan State game. It was a rivalry game. I think the environment was probably exactly what Michigan wanted in that game. I mean, this is, especially the first half, it felt like a very, mano-a-mano type of situation. But when you actually break down the stats, it did not reflect like that at all. Michigan was impressive on the ground, ran for 135 yards. They were impressive through the air, threw for 110. They were 63% on first downs in the first half. They outpossessed Michigan State by 5 minutes. They didn't punt. And the only problem with the first half is that they kicked some field goals. And then you look at the second half, and this is where they really turned it on. They talked about Illinois and their ability to adjust at halftime. I think Michigan might be in position with Ohio State for second best in the conference at making those adjustments. But second half, they outgained Michigan State 198 yards to 63. They outrushed them 141 to -18 for Michigan State, 50% on third downs. Michigan State did not convert a third down in the second half, owned the time of possession, close to 23 minutes of that second half. Michigan had the football, and it's really hard to win games when you don't touch the damn ball. As I would like to put it, it was a good old-fashioned ass beating, and to me, it wasn't really close. What were your thoughts as you walked away from watching that game?
No, I agree with you. I think that's obviously the stats don't lie, and then even watching it, to your point, this Michigan team has done this to Penn State. They've done it to pretty much everyone that they've played, where physically they've dominated you. They've made you feel like a lesser person after you walked out of there. And I think probably a lesser man and a lesser team. And they did that to little brother all day on Saturday.
I was waiting for a little brother reference. I wasn't going to throw it out there, but I figured you might toss it.
I figured I had to, I'll be that guy. I'll be the most hated. I'll be the most hated. But this Michigan team, I've said it. I've said it, and I need someone to prove me right at this point in time, because no one's been able to stop them from imposing their will, especially in the run game. Yeah, but I really got to see JJ. If I'm going to put these guys in a category with, and it's not even JJ, and like that's the thing, because I think the kid's talented as shit. I just need to see like Michigan put him in situations where he's got to make some football plays at that position, some quarterback plays. Like he's got to operate, and like, hey, I'll never forget it. My freshman year, we played in the rain against Kent State, and dumping ass rain. We were up big in like the first quarter, then it starts dumping, and we kept throwing the football, and I didn't realize it at that time. And I asked Coach O'Brien after. I'm like, hey, like, why the hell do we keep throwing? He goes, God, I just want to see how you're going to react. 18-year-old kid playing in the rain. We're up big. I just kind of want to see how you were going to react in it. I mean, torrential downpour. So, like, for me, I think that doing that is healthy when you have the ability to control the variables in a game where you oftentimes don't have the opportunity to do that.
For sure.
Because you're going to need it at some point. And I know if this Michigan team, and I've said this, if this Michigan team wants to go toe-to-toe with, I mean, we're going to find out against Ohio State, because we've talked at nauseum about this Ohio State team this year compared to the Ohio State team last year. But even in the bigger picture, Tennessee, even an Alabama team right now, like there's teams that are in this top 6 that I think will pose Michigan a lot of problems.
In Alabama right now, which is wild, considering who Nick Saban is as a coach. Their secondary is the weakness of their defense right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be able to challenge with the throw game. I'm totally there with you. And you are becoming a little media personality over there, my friend, because this segues perfectly into what's next here on the rundown, because I wanted to talk about the big play production from the wide receivers and the pass catchers for Michigan. So in this game, they had 4 passes of 15 or more yards. They had a 28-yarder to Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end. That was only 7 air yards, and then Luke did the rest. And they had an 18-yarder to Schoonmaker that was only 4 air yards, and then Schoonmaker did the rest. They had a 24-yarder to Schoonmaker, a lot of tight end action here. That was 19 air yards, and then he did the rest for the rest of the 5. And then they had a 29-yarder to Bell, ended up being 22 air yards. So, excuse me, 3 of their 4 big passes were under 20 air yards. To me, I need to see if this Michigan team can challenge down the field. And I really need to see it from the wide receiver position. I love that they integrate the tight ends. As a former linebacker, those guys piss me off because they're really hard to defend. Yeah. And Michigan has a great game plan because a lot of the plays will be on wide delays. The tight end will delay, act like he's pass protecting, and then he'll sneak out. And you forget about that guy every time. Great design, but can you throw it down the football field? That is the biggest question for me when it comes to this offense and JJ McCarthy. And part of the issue in answering that question, they don't do it. They don't attempt to throw it down the football field. So we're not going to get the answer to that question until they're in a situation where they got to have it.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine if these guys had big play, big strike ability, and if they used like first down play action. Sure. Like what type of bind that would put a defense into, like first down play action, big shots. Like, yeah, it'd be like USC when they had Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush and Lindell White. And then they had, who's the fucking freak show outside that was like 6'6", Dwayne Johnson.
They had a bunch of those guys.
Dwayne Jared. But that whole run, right? Like, You didn't know what to do. Like you had a team that had a quarterback who could facilitate down the field. They had burners on the outside that could get open and catch it. And then they had 2 guys behind it that they could turn around and hand it off to, and they could score at any point in time. So when you're at that type of bind, like that's when a team that's built the way Michigan's built becomes as dangerous as like the new age Ohio State and the new age Tennessee, who use tempo and thoroughbreds everywhere and just throw to green grass. So like if you're gonna be old school, you gotta have the complete package in Ohio, and Michigan hasn't shown that yet, but they can't knock them. They also haven't had to, right? They have not had to. So tip of the cap to that. I'll drink to that. Good job, Jim Harbaugh, and the Fighting Wolverines up there. But I just think that you're gonna have to eventually.
There's going to come a time.
If this road, every day, every dog has its day.
Yeah, and I mean, if this Ohio State game at the end of the year is going to be as back and forth as we might think it is, that would be the time. And that's a hard spot because they got to travel to Columbus to ask JJ McCarthy to do that. I want to talk about Blake Corum real quick. I mean, this is a guy who we've seen hit some home runs this year, but he had a 16-yarder, 17 to 17 to 12. Those were his big runs of the game. It was no home runs, but the issue with this cat, man, just keep handing him the pill and he'll wear your ass down.
Yeah. He's kind of like to me, he's kind of like a Emmitt Smith and like a Barry Sanders combination. Like he's got the home run ability and the short area quickness that Barry had, but he's also got the consistency, pad level, and like always falls forward and is always going to get positive yards. That kind of like
always falls forward
and hit That's it like he knew what he was doing.
As a backer. Yeah,
and he's got the patience though too, right? Like he'll
Le'Veon Bellish patience,
5, 6. Yes, right? Like yes, he's got a really unique skill set, man. I love watching him run the football. Like it's like he's going to be really fucking good in the NFL. Like someone's going to have a lot of fun with him. And you and I both know that. Like someone's going to have a ton of fun with him because he can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield. Like
I wish they would throw it to him more.
Yeah. He's going to be a dynamic weapon, man.
He is. He's going to be absolutely phenomenal in the NFL. My dad texted me over the weekend. He's as sick as I am, so he watches as much football as I do, 67 years old out there just living his best life. And he hit me with the text. He said, Blake Corum's patience reminds me of when Le'Veon Bell was at Michigan State. And that one really hit me because their games are very different. But if you're looking for a comp in terms of patience that Big Ten fans would be familiar with, that would be the one because he lets the fucking thing set up before he hits it. And so many running backs, man, lack that ability to just wait that half second to let it really set up before they go. And it is such a beautiful thing when it's in action because you're sitting there, you're like, oh, this is a dead play. And just the blocks, you let the guys get on body, and next thing you know, it's hitting the second level, and you're like, holy moly, this guy's good.
Yeah. No, and those 16 and 17 yarders, man, they wear your ass out too. Defensively.
They do. I mean, those were some backbreakers too, because he had them in situations where you thought, we bottled this guy up for the first couple, and it's like, nah. So last thing on this game, Michigan second half defense, absolutely phenomenal. They gave up 3 points to Michigan State, 0 points to Michigan State, 3 to Penn State in the second half. Their last couple of battles, man, I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, and you've hit on this a little bit, and I've kind of piggybacked at other points in time. But this defense, man, is really, really, really good. I think exceeding expectations considering what they lost from production standpoint. And from a production standpoint, are exceeding what the defense was last year, even though they had all the name recognition that they did. Are they still? You can correct me if I'm wrong here because you are the stats guy. Now, are they still outpacing them from last year? I would assume so.
I can't tell you that, but I'm going to say fine. Yes. I mean, if I lied to the people, then I lied to the people, right?
Hey, we'll get it back. We can always come back on record and get it back.
They're not going to double check us.
That's true.
Yeah. No, it's been really good. I mean, just if we're looking at a downside of this defense, I thought Keon Coleman looked really good against the Michigan secondary. So, they got to tighten that up. But outside of that, man, these guys are playing out of their freaking minds. Let's get to some big storylines here. I'm going to skip the first one because we kind of talked about it already with J.J. McCarthy and throwing the football down the field. This second one, though, we touched on it a little bit. I want to circle back because I think it's important to highlight this Illinois team in the way that they have been playing. They're 7-1 for the first time since 2001. I mean, it's been ridiculous. Brett Bielema has been phenomenal. But I wanted to ask you what you like the most about this Illinois football team.
That's tough. I love DeVito. When you talk about a guy who is accurate, facilitates, throws with timing, anticipation, and accuracy, gets catchable balls to his playmakers outside. There's a lot of hidden yards in that, and there's a lot of hidden efficiency in that oftentimes you overlook. Just as someone observing. So I love him. I love Chase Brown, obviously, just a really dynamic player. Another one who's I think is going to be a really good pro. You can use him in a lot of different ways. But I want to go back to the job Bielema's done and both the coordinators, but just the whole staff in general, because I feel like as simple as the concept is, so many people fail to do it. But when you get in situations as a coach, you have to sit there and evaluate what you have, where you can take your strengths to leverage them against other teams' weaknesses and put them in those situations over and over and over again. And to your point, you may come in with a great game plan. You may be working efficiently in that game plan. A lot of coaches just put it in cruise control at that point, saying, oh, we're up by 2, here we go. They're making adjustments at halftime, even when they're up by 2 scores, to be even better and more efficient because they know they have to. And it's a standard that they have. So I really want to put a big emphasis on the coaching staff and the way that they put those players on both sides of the football in positions to be successful over and over again. And then they're not afraid to take a damn good thing and try to make it better during the game. It's a recipe for a really good program, specifically when you're dealing with the challenges that Illinois has, just location, who they're recruiting against, everything. Really good recipe for them to be a really good football team here for the next however long Bielema is there.
Yeah, they're maximizing guys. I think that's the thing that stands out to me is they have maximized all their players. I wanted to talk about Tommy DeVito because I had him on my show. I'm taping this. Was this a Wednesday? So we had him on my show that I do with Bally, and he's great, and I think he's the perfect quarterback for what they're doing. But he's a New Jersey guy, and I wanted to press him on that. You know, both of my parents are from North New Jersey. They're from Hackensack and Patterson, respectively. If you ever seen the movie Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman, that was my mother's high school. So, you know, they got that Jersey shit in them. But I think that Jersey is one of the worst states in the United States. I don't think I've ever told you this, Hack, and this might offend you a little bit.
No, I'm a transplant. I'm here because my wife, so you're good. Okay. And I'm down in South Jersey, so right. I don't know how much time you spent down here.
South Jersey, basically Pennsylvania for other Jersey people that might be listening to this. But you know, it's a bottom 5 state in the United States, in my personal opinion. So I tell that to DeVito on the show, and this man says, how much? He said, where are your parents from? And I'm like, oh, you talk about where my people from. So I tell him. And then he says, well, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Ohio. He said, man, y'all ain't got grit in Ohio. Y'all aren't tough over there. He said, we played a team from Ohio. I'm 2-0 versus Ohio teams. Like, this man was really coming at me.
Oh, yeah.
And I say this to say, that boy's got some edge. And you can flip it back to a couple weeks ago. I can't, for the life of me, remember who they were playing. But he wasn't supposed to play in the game. He didn't practice all week, wasn't supposed to play in the game. And some bitch plays, and he has a touchdown run when it was after the Iowa game. He's got a bum knee or bum ankle, whatever it was. And this dude pulls the ball down and runs it because he's got that grit. Like, he is an embodiment of what people talk about when they talk about Jersey guys. And he was really giving me the business. And I feel like that's an embodiment of who he is as a player. I think that he may be the most valuable asset that was gotten out of the transfer portal this past year. And you can talk about Caleb Williams all you want. You can talk about Jordan Addison all you want. And some of the other guys, Mitchell Tinsley, whoever you want to talk about. Tommy DeVito, if he was not playing at Illinois, this is no shade to Art Sitkowski, because he is a guy who I have the utmost respect for the quarterback situation there at Illinois. If Tommy DeVito's not playing, Illinois is not 7-1. I'm going on record as saying that. And Chase Brown has been phenomenal. And that defense with those defensive backs who want to put their face on a motherfucker, I love all that. Tommy DeVito is so important to that team. And I personally believe that had they not gotten that dude out of the portal, this would be a very different season for them.
Wow.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I can't argue with it because
you can't. It's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, they're 7-1 with him under center, so I can't argue with it. I don't live in a world of hypotheticals, JP.
Oh, here we fucking go. I don't live in a world of hypotheticals. All right, my guy, Christian Hackenberg. Love him to death. This last one, I think, is a good segue into the big picture where we give our national perspective, and the college football playoff rankings just came out. And I wanted to go over this common opponents thing because I've, a lot of people after Ohio State's performance against Penn State are using that to bolster Michigan's resume, which I believe what they did to Penn State was a moment that you can really hang your hat on. I truly do believe that. But I want to go through this common opponents thing because it's really interesting in what I did through some of my research. Right, so they have 3 common opponents, Iowa, Michigan State, and Penn State so far. Michigan was at Iowa, and they won 27-14. Ohio State hosted Iowa. They won that game 54-10. Michigan hosted Michigan State 29-7. Talked about that game. Ohio State was at Michigan State. They won that 49-20. This is the one, though, is the Penn State game where Michigan was host to Penn State, won that 41-17. Ohio State played at Happy Valley, and they won it 44-31. And so people would say Michigan was a lot more impressive against Penn State than Ohio State was. And I think in terms of how Michigan really controlled the second half of that football game, folks would be right to say that. I'm totally on board. But let's dig into the stats a little bit. So Michigan led Penn State by 17 with 5 minutes and 30 seconds left in that football game. They scored a touchdown late to really blow it out and go to a 24-point margin. Ohio State led Penn State by 20 points with 2 minutes and 42 seconds or whatever the case was left on the game clock. And then Penn State was able to go down. They scored a touchdown. They narrowed it to 13.
Another reason I'm with Clifford fucker covers.
Hey, look, he's got some shit to him, boy. I'm a Sean Clifford apologist. I'm just gonna come out and say it right now. I'm a Sean Clifford apologist. I think he is an impressive young man, and that dude is a gamer. Like, I don't care what anybody has to say. I want that guy on my side. And he's an Ohio guy too, so I'm gonna take credit for that shit. But neither here nor there. When you start to look at that, where Michigan scores a late touchdown, and on the other side, Penn State scores a late touchdown to narrow the margin, it's hard for me to really say, with Ohio State being at Penn State, that these aren't comparable wins. Like, when you really get down to the nitty gritty of how these games actually went, they're looking more comparable than the box score says. And I know these people love to blow these games out. Why Michigan would score late in that game is because folks really only look at the box score, right? But to me, when you actually boil it down, 2 minutes and change left, Ohio State's up by 20. Right. There's 5 minutes left in that game. Michigan's only up by 17. I'm not saying Ohio State played a better game, because obviously Michigan did. But I think they're a lot closer than what meets the eye when you just look at the box score.
Yeah. And I also think so here, I'll start with this, and then I'll get to living in a little bit of a hypothetical here. I think that oftentimes we get too caught up, and people get too caught up in doing this comparison. And the only thing that I will say that Michigan did that was really impressive was the 418 yards on the fucking ground. I mean, that
wasn't just really impressive. I mean, that was fucking asinine, the way that they ran it down Penn State's throat. I'm totally.
And here's the thing, like, they're not doing that week in, week out, right? Like, that was part of the reason why I made the statement. I caught flack for it. Part of the reason why I made the statement that Penn State, I don't think, showed up.
They didn't.
At Ann Arbor. They showed up and got their ass beat. I agree with everyone who says that. They did.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, I think Penn State did not give Michigan their best shot. And then Michigan proceeded to give Penn State their best shot offensively from a run game standpoint. Now, hypotheticals. Where was I going with this?
Oh, Mr. Hypothetical.
I lost it. I had some hypotheticals. You don't even like it.
You hate hypotheticals so much that you lose your train of thought. I'm going to give some stats out here for the people listening. You can plug your ears.
I'll try to keep this going.
Back.
No, but I'll try to keep this going. Go ahead.
But when you look at what Michigan's done on the ground, they had 234 against Colorado State. They had 268 against Hawaii. They had 192 against Connecticut. They had 243 against Maryland. They had 172 against Iowa. They had 165 against Indiana. Then you go to Penn State, it's a 418 game. And then Michigan State, they had 276. And these are big numbers. And you look at the rushing averages. I mean, 8 yards a carry against Hawaii, even though Hawaii's, they're bad, but that's a big ass number. 7.6 against Penn State is a really big number. But as you really start to boil it down, against Iowa, they were a little bit over 4 yards a carry. It's the same thing against Indiana, a little bit over 4 yards a carry. Against Connecticut, they were just a little bit over 4 yards a carry. Like, this is a really good rushing attack. It's not me trying to diminish the rushing attack for Michigan, but what you said about what happened against Penn State, I think it's a combination of this Michigan team has an identity where they want to get the game started on the ground. Nobody's denying that.
Yeah.
I also think that Penn State, that was as bad of a performance as we're going to see defensively out of that team.
Yeah. I think there's outliers in all three of these that you just talked about. I think there's things that you need to, if you were to do it from a statistical standpoint, you got to cut out because they're so extreme. What I will say is this: I think Ohio State and Michigan are built defensively similar, comparable. I think you can just say, like, in terms of if you're going into this and saying, all right, what if we're going to go strength for strength? All right, defense, comparable. Offense, Michigan runs the football better. Michigan or Ohio State has a gazillion more weapons and can score faster, more efficiently than Michigan could ever dream of scoring. Right. So to me, like, if I'm Michigan going into this game that's coming up here, they have to play perfectly, and Ohio State has a longer leash heading into this game in terms of mistakes they can make defensively, even mistakes I think they can make offensively, because they can make it up. Whereas if this Michigan team's down 3 scores or even 2 scores, and they're forced to now become something that they haven't been all year, how does that work against a really good defense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I respect the piss out of this Michigan team, and I respect what Harbaugh's done over the last 2 years. I agree with that statement. It's just the fact that I'm not exactly sure that Ohio State gets up 2 or 3 scores and then forces Michigan to play like that. I think it's more a dogfight. I think that these teams are very even. And this will be a good segue into the college football playoff rankings that just came out. Like the CFP committee doesn't think that they're as even as I do. But I really do think that these teams are very even. So let's run through the rankings real quick. Tennessee coming in at number 1, got no problem with that. I feel like they have earned that spot, and they're getting ready to play Georgia this weekend, so that shit will sort itself out. Ohio State sitting there at number 2. Love Ohio State at number 2. I think that they've earned that spot. UGA at number 3. Love what they did there. I think UGA should be at number 3. Clemson at number 4. Bunch of bullshit. Michigan at number 5. Bunch of bullshit. Alabama at number 6. Bunch of bullshit. TCU at number 7. Bunch of bullshit. Oregon at number 8. Smells like bullshit to me. USC at number 9. I'm totally fine with that. And LSU at number 10 is a fucking it's a heap of horse shit to me.
Yeah, that's a big stretch.
So I'll get into my thoughts and then I'll let you kind of piggyback off of it because I got some really strong thoughts on this thing.
Go ahead.
So the Tennessee UGA thing sorts itself out like right now. So I'm here for it. I think Tennessee, with their win over Alabama, even though I think Alabama's more down than folks will say nationally, it's still a really gritty win. Alabama typically would win a game like that. So I'm totally here for it. And the Tennessee offense to me, I mean, you can flip a coin for Ohio State or Tennessee offensively. They are a top 2 offense in the nation. They might be number 1 in that conversation. Defensively leaves a lot to be desired, but what they did against Kentucky, I thought showed a lot because I mean they made Will Levis look like a bad quarterback in that game. Then you get to Ohio State. We've talked enough about them on this show. It's just a really good football team at this point. UGA, the highs are high. You win by 46 against Oregon, but the lows are low because you get into a 4-point tussle against Missouri. Clemson is where my antennas went up initially with this. And this is where I said last week that you need to be paying attention to how they backload the top 25 because you got Syracuse, NC State, and Wake Forest sitting there at 20, 21, 22, whatever permutation of that it actually is. That to me feels like a way
Tulane
to justify.
up there too?
No,
Tulane's like at like 12.
Don't do this. This is how you justify though putting Clemson in at number 4 because they've got a horseshit schedule. They don't play anybody good. Their conference title game might be against a team that could be sitting there at 25, might not even be there at the end of the season. And you get to parade around the fact that they've got 3 top 25 CFP wins and nobody else does. But they have not been all that impressive to me. They have a quarterback issue. This is untenable in my opinion. And then you get to Michigan sitting there at number 5. And I understand they're out of conference. They did it to themselves with the out of conference. Totally get that. But are you trying to tell me if you are a person that is an avid watcher of football, that you would really fix your mouth to say that you truly believe in your heart of hearts that Michigan is a worse team than Clemson at this point? I call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
I really do.
No, I agree with you on that. Go ahead. Keep going.
And then, the Alabama thing, I think they're getting too much credit for who they have been in the past. And this is not to say that I think Alabama's a bad team, but this is to say that Alabama is not what they have been in the past. They should have lost to Texas had Quinn Ewers been fully healthy that game. Could have lost to A&M. Their backup quarterback was playing. I don't hold that against them nearly as much. And then they have the Tennessee loss. And they lost to a really good team. So you can't hold that against them. But for TCU, who's got some good wins on their schedule and is undefeated at this point, their quarterback, Max Duggan, is playing really well.
I would argue at times this TCU, their collective wins may be stronger than anybody's.
I don't disagree with that. Stronger than Clemson, right?
I'm saying stronger than anybody's.
And I'm totally there with you. And the Kansas thing is really hurting them right now because Kansas is bad without Jalen Daniels starting at quarterback. But when they played Kansas, that Kansas team was really freaking good, guys. And I think we need to judge their win against Kansas for what it was at the moment with the fully healthy Kansas team. And Jalen Daniels got hurt that game. I totally understand it. But they showed a lot of resolve in that. Oregon sitting there at 8 is really hard for me to stomach because to me, they've shown a lot lately. And that loss that they took to Georgia was horrific. But it was a neutral site loss, and they had a brand new
It wasn't even a neutral site loss either. I mean,
I'm giving the Benny. It was really a home game for UGA. But They also had a brand new head coach, youngest in Power 5, his first time coaching. Like, he's going against a guy who freaking groomed him. Like, that was going to be a tough one for them. I'll skip over USC. I think USC is probably properly positioned out of anybody here outside of the top three. And then LSU. Let's talk about this. The highest ranked two-loss team. I don't want to say that this was to prop up Tennessee, because I think Tennessee could have stood on its own with what they've done so far. I think this was to prop up Alabama, and potentially if Tennessee loses this game to Georgia, they'll still be in good position, right? Because now Alabama is playing in a game this weekend that's billed as a top 10 matchup. I don't think it is. LSU, you look at who their wins are. They got into a tussle with a bad Auburn team that Penn State freaking boat raced by 30 points. You're gonna call their signature win Ole Miss. Who was Ole Miss playing?
Yeah,
Vanderbilt team that they let score 28 points on them. An Auburn team that they didn't beat impressively. Tulane team that they beat by 8 points. This is your number 11 team in Ole Miss, and I get that they just played and LSU has to be over them, even though Ole Miss has one less loss. Like, you can do all the mental gymnastics you want to. Neither one of those teams are properly ranked. LSU to me feels more in line with what Penn State is in terms of ranking. So if you put them in that 13, 14, 15 range, I'm here for it. Top 10 team? Oh my God. And this is the problem with me, dude. I should not be this upset about what's going on right now because there's so much football left. But my little freaking linebacker P brain cannot fucking handle this, bro. I cannot handle this. Is so bad to me. It's just it chaps my ass.
Well, it is what it is. Here's the other thing too, and it's like the whole ranking system in general is like, who the fuck is doing this? Like who's sitting in the room? Like, what is the room comprised of? Like, how many of these guys have played? How many of these guys know what even the hell they're looking at? How many of them have just really covered stuff and been jock sniffers their entire life? And that's not to knock anybody. Hey, I don't mean to be offensive, but I mean, how many of them have never even
go ahead
played
and
the
apologize
game
after you're offensive?
Yeah, but how many of them have even played the game, right? So you're sitting here, who is making the decisions here? And I think that there's definitely politics. There's definitely money that goes into it, just like you were saying with this Alabama thing, trying to save face. To me, at the end of the day, at this point in time in the season, it's hard to knock any team that's undefeated, right? Like if you have undefeated football teams.
Is it hard to knock anybody that's undefeated? Because I'm knocking the shit out of Clemson right now.
I know
they are not the number 4 team in the country.
They're not the number 4 team in the country, but at the end of the day, JP, if they run the table and
if they run the table, they still don't deserve to be in there. Dude, but this is the problem with that, though.
But they're going to be
Michigan or Ohio State with a loss would have played a playoff caliber team on their schedule, and especially if it's a close loss. Clemson will have played 2 fucking FCS teams, a Notre Dame that's down, an NC State, a Wake Forest, and a Syracuse are getting too much credit for doing the absolute bare minimum.
I'm with you, but Clemson's the only other program outside of Ohio State who's beaten an SEC team for a national championship in the last fucking 10 years.
Dude, I don't care. The history doesn't matter to me.
But I know it might not matter to you, but that's my point, though, is there's people, that's part of what I'm saying is who's making the decisions. Some people, I'm making the argument, I'm playing devil's advocate for people who are sitting there saying that, right?
I don't like this.
Clemson's going to travel, it's going to go. But I know you don't. But that's the reality of it, though, dude. And you know that too. Like people are making those decisions.
I know.
And like that's why I said what bothers me is like that TCU run, dude. TCU beat Kansas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State in a row.
Yes, it's a meat grinder of a schedule, dude.
And granted, they are who they are. I'll even go back one before the Kansas game, Oklahoma, right?
Right.
You want to talk about name brand,
right?
Suck dog shit team this year.
Also, if TCU's name was Texas or Oklahoma right now, I bet you they'd be in the top 4.
They'd be in the top 4 for sure, no doubt. But they've just been off the face. So here's the thing, though, and this is where I agree with you. There is a lot of football left. It's all going to hash itself out because at the end of the day, the Ohio State Michigan thing is going to figure itself out. The SEC one's a bit of a conundrum because I do agree.
I'm listening to you. I just got to get more ice.
You're good. You're good. I think that I agree with you with the Alabama team. This Alabama team is like not what we're used to seeing from Alabama teams. People may look at it and think it is the case. Offensively, they're not built the same way. Defensively, they're not playing as cohesively as they have in the past. I think they're kind of
got really good players, but they don't play complementary on that side of the ball. Again, I never played a lot of defense in my life, so I'm not going to pretend like I really know what I'm talking about, but that's just what it looks like to me. So it's going to work itself out. Where it is, they got it. The first one, there's going to be some controversy. There's going to be some, junk. But I've said this. I think at the end of the year, there's a very, very strong argument to say that the four best teams in the country, if you're just talking football teams, top to bottom, special teams, everything, could be 2 teams from the SEC and 2 teams from the Big Ten.
Don't disagree with that whatsoever. I'm just, that's the part that frustrates me. And there are some football people on that committee, but I'm not exactly sure that their bandwidth is available to do that job. Like, you have ADs on there, and some of these cats got to go out and hire coaches for their teams right now. Like, I think the Colorado AD, let me make sure I got this right. Dead air, good for podcasting.
I just don't know, dude. It's so early, and there's, like I said, I think part of this is to chap people's asses the way they've chapped yours tonight.
I mean, my dumb ass is over here talking about it right now, right? Like, my ass is really chapped right now. So Rick George is the AD of Colorado. He's got to hire a coach. So if I'm the president of that university, the conversation I'm having with this guy goes as follows. Hey, man, know you're on the playoff committee. All that shit is cool. It's dandy. We don't have a team that's even close to that, and we got to hire a coach. So as much time as you can spend on that aspect and not on watching these other teams and seeing who we're going to give praise to, that's what you need to be doing right now. And so this is not to say that he's not doing his job, right? Because I am 100% sure that he wants to fulfill his obligation to this duty to the best of his ability. But there are other factors that go into his ability to do this job in conjunction with a job that pays him a paycheck, right? And so, like, that's, I don't know. But for if you're a football person, you want to see the 4 best teams, not necessarily the 4 most deserving teams. You don't want to see the 4 biggest brands. You don't want to see the 4 teams that just check the boxes all the way through. You want to see teams that you feel like can really create good matchups and win the title. And that's where this 4-team thing is an issue. We're not going to deal with it much longer. And I'm sure when we go away from it, it's not going to be, such and such should have been 12 instead of whoever. It's going to turn to, this team should have been in this spot so they can get a home field advantage over this team or whatever. Like, that's a new conversation.
And that's a fine argument to have, because if you're bitching, because at the end of the day, if you're outside of the 12, you had
plenty of opportunities.
Yep. You're a 3-loss football team. Like,
had a lot of chances.
Shoot, flush, shoot, dude. Like, that's it.
All right. So in this CFP conversation, and then we'll move off from this so I can lower my blood pressure. There have been 2 teams in the college football playoff era that have made it into the Final Four, starting outside of the top 10. 2015 Oklahoma was ranked 15. They made it into the Final Four. The team that I played on, the 2014 National Championship Ohio State Buckeyes, got a great ring to it if you want to repeat it to yourself, started at number 16. You know who's sitting at number 16 right now, my friend? Illinois. I'll answer it for you. This is a team that if they win, I believe they should be in. You would have a win over Michigan. Then in the Big Ten Championship, you would have a win over either Michigan or Ohio State. You would be a 1-loss team. In 2014, my Ohio State Buckeyes lost to a very bad Virginia Tech team early on in the year. Week 1, Illinois loses to a very bad Indiana team and probably should have won that game had it not been for a bad call that took points off of the board. To me, this is a very intriguing spot for the Fighting Illini to be in. If they win, they should be in.
Yeah, I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, buddy.
And I completely agree. I think whoever wins the Big Ten should be in without a doubt. I think it's a lock. I can't say that about the Pac-12.
Shouldn't say it about the ACC.
Or the ACC. I can't say it about anybody outside of the Big Ten and the SEC.
I'm with you.
Those are the only 2 conferences that I think conference champion is a lock.
Yeah, because the top end of those conferences are teams that we know can win
Very
national
strong.
titles. And so if you are able to run through that and win the conference, you have proven to America that you are a team that can win a national title. So
everyone
totally
else is in the wilderness. Everyone else is in the wilderness unless you run the table.
Yes, and this isn't to say that there are not other good teams outside of those conferences, but it is to say that if you have the wherewithal to run through an SEC or Big Ten schedule, and you are a one-loss or undefeated team, like I mean, come on, guys, it seems like a layup to me.
You're in.
You know, this committee will find a way to screw it up. All right, we'll get out of here on some big previews. Guys, I'm not going to sit here and try to lie to you and tell you that this is a wonderful slate of games coming up this weekend, because really not. But there are a couple that are intriguing to me. Betting lines provided by BetRivers Sportsbook, although I did not take the time to put the lines in this week. We have Iowa visiting Purdue. An important game here because Purdue is still alive in the West, and Iowa might have had their get-right game against the Northwestern Kitty Cats. What do you see out of this one, my friend?
No, I don't think Iowa's got right. I think they
don't have the juice.
I think they ran into a dog shit football team that might be
no
worse
juice.
Than them. No juice. No juice.
Oh,
I
man.
think Iowa goes back to being the zebra that they were, and
doesn't change the stripes.
Yeah, and I'm gonna. Yeah, it sometimes blends in one way or the other. You know, maybe it's white, maybe it's black. Who knows? Sure. But it goes back to being what it was, whatever that is. They're going back to who they were, and I think Purdue's gonna roll. But again,
can you trust it?
Purdue's kicked me in my balls so many times, dude. I say this with a lot of angst and uncertainty.
Yeah. Okay. So that is my biggest toss up in this one is, does Purdue do the winning things instead of the losing things in this matchup? Because we've seen them do the losing things. Like that is the thing that gives you a lot of trepidation about Purdue in a game that they probably should win without a lot of question. And Iowa, to me, I think their defense is intriguing because it's the type of defense that can cause legitimate problems. And we saw Aiden O'Connell go out and not necessarily have great games before, even though both you and I love him. But the thing that stands out to me about this Iowa defense is they're so static. They are who they are. So they're going to show up. They're going to play a ton of quarters. They're not going to do a lot of disguise. They're not going to do a lot of movement. And Jeff Brom, the way that his brain works, man, big brain over there, he will scheme. That man will scheme. And that's where I'm curious to see if Iowa will remain what they are and just play their base coverages, or if this is a game where they say, okay, we know that we got a scheme doctor on the other side. Can we add in a couple of wrinkles, a few things to maybe be a little bit tricky in this one?
Maybe. I think that the advantage is still Purdue, though, from that standpoint, because you got some guys you can move inside. You got some decent tight ends. There's some mismatch opportunities there in that base quarters. Because at the end of the day, I don't think Iowa's going to change, man. They may throw a wrinkle or two on third down.
You're down on the Hawkeyes, man.
They're going to throw a wrinkle or two on third down, but that's been the only thing that they've been able to fall back on is that defense. That's kept them in football games. So they're not going to do anything. I don't think they're going to do anything drastic.
Okay, that's fair enough. And then we got Maryland at Wisconsin. Jim Leonard has done an admirable job to me as the interim head coach there. Got a couple wins under his belt. Mike Loxley's crew to me has been so intriguing this year. First off, just as a coach, I love the way he operates. I like what he does with the media. I've seen him around his team. I love the way he handles those guys. I think he's put together a hell of a roster. Their defense to me has been leaps and bounds better than it was a year ago. Talia Tungavailoa, we both love that kid. Yeah. He's got a lot of grit to him. He's a great quarterback, got a hell of an arm, knows how to extend plays, can use the wheels when he decides to. This is intriguing from the fact that I think Jim Leonard's defense has looked more like Jim Leonard's defense. And depending on what version of Graham Mertz we get, do we get Graham Brady or do we get Graham Glennon? Like, I'm not exactly sure who we get in this one, but that will have a big factor on this game.
I think that is the factor. Who shows up? Which number 5 shows up for Wisconsin? I think Michigan's going to still, or not Michigan, sorry, Maryland. I think Maryland's still going to do enough to get theirs offensively. They're really explosive, man. It's hard to contain that for 4 quarters. I still think that they're going to be able to get what they need to get. If Wisconsin does not find a way to control line of scrimmage, control the time of possession, and Graham Mertz is going to have to make 2 or 3 plays, maybe 5. Just to throw that out there, 2 to 5 plays. 2 to 5 plays. I'm confident in 2 to 5. 2 to 5 plays.
I'm confident in 2 to 5.
2 to 5 plays on Saturday.
But 6 is outside too much for you.
Yeah, 6 is too much. He won't do 6. It's 2 to 5, and there's going to be 2 to 5 that you can circle that he had to play outside of himself and the scheme.
All right. You know what? I'm pretty much with you. 2 to 5, I feel like is right in the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. He
can give you that. 6-1 might be a little bit too much to ask.
Yeah.
He's going to be a huge factor in this. I totally agree. I just there's some intrigue in this one because Wisconsin has proven that they've been a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde this year. I also think that if Maryland was playing in the Big Ten West outside of Illinois, like they probably win the thing, right?
We've both said it. I think that's part of the issue with living in the East.
Yeah,
living with the beasts in the East, dude. It's a tough spot.
Man. It's a tough spot. All right, before we get up out of here, Halloween. Just what is this? A couple days ago.
Yep.
And now we're kind of turning the page. We're getting into Thanksgiving territory. Christmas is on the horizon in a couple of months. When is it appropriate to start putting up the Christmas decorations? Because this has been a point of contention in the Perry household.
You see, I'm a traditionalist. I'm first off, I'm minimalistic with decorations because to me it's kind of like,
bingo.
I'm gonna do all this work, and then you're gonna sit there and point me around, and then I'm gonna have to take all this stuff down. I get it. I'll be in the spirit, but I'm not going balls out, right? So like I don't decorate for I'm sure it'll change, when I have kids and stuff, but I don't decorate for Halloween. Don't do it. Not my thing. We'll put out like the fall attire, like the mums and the pumpkins and all that stuff like on the doorstep. We'll do that like right when it starts getting really fall-y. And that's kind of serves as like my I guess you could say Halloween / Thanksgiving decorations, but it has to. I give Thanksgiving its fucking due, man, because I love Thanksgiving.
Yes,
it's my favorite year. So I give Thanksgiving its due, and you won't see a damn Christmas tree up until after Thanksgiving.
All right, so this is an argument that my wife and I had this morning. Madison is wonderful. We have a lot of fun together. It's been just phenomenal. Like people said, things change when you're married. We haven't had those things yet. Granted, we don't have children. But like it's been awesome. But we get into the same argument every year. So Madison is a person that believes once Halloween is over, and she goes all out for Halloween. We still got some of the things up. She got this wine holder that's like skeleton hands that I hate. She's big on the Hocus Pocus. The number 2 came out this year. She was all in on it, had a watch party, the whole deal, right? So Halloween, she just came out the room and literally flipped me the bird. Like this is how she feels about the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So Halloween ends, and we're sitting in the room this morning. She just got back from Columbus. She was visiting family, and she says, "Hey, I'm getting ready to get some stuff from Target so I can decorate for Christmas." And the way that my schedule had been set up in the past is I was living in Columbus, traveling to Chicago to fulfill my obligations for Big Ten Network. And so a lot of the times it would be Madison setting up the holiday decorations on her own. She wants me to reiterate, it was every time that she would set it up on her own. But we had a house in Columbus, had a little bit of space, so we would do the 2 Christmas tree thing, and she wanted to have all the garland and all that other stuff. Decorated the one tree the one way, decorated the other tree the other way, whole deal. So I'm sitting here today, and she's like, I'm about to get some stuff. I said, why don't we just let Thanksgiving breathe? It's my favorite holiday out of all of them. I like to cook. I want a nice spread. I want to really enjoy Thanksgiving. I want to be thankful, right? I want to live in some thankfulness. And she's like, no,
We have to set it up for Christmas. Christmas is coming. The holiday flavors are out for my favorite drinks. We have to do Christmas. I'm like, no, we should not do Christmas right now. We should do Thanksgiving. Let it breathe. The day after Thanksgiving, if you want to go all out with the Christmas decorations, I'm totally here for it. It's a battle that I am on the losing side of, but I just wanted to hear some confirmation that we should let Thanksgiving breathe.
No, I'm with you. I am on that. I'm on that side with you, and I'll die on that mountain. My wife knows that. I won't move for nothing until
you're better than I am.
There's not a damn Christmas light going up. I'm not even fucking. There's not a string of fucking tinsel.
Nah, it'll be some lights around here. It's just I won't be necessarily happy with it. You know what they say: happy wife, happy life. This was a really fun one. I think it was informative. I got some things off of my chest. I know you did as well.
Yep.
But as always, the JP and Hack Show, part of the Field of 12 Media Network, sponsored by Bet Rivers. Christian Hackenberg holding it down, coming over here with the big quarterback brain. I am just P-Brain Joshua Perry, the former linebacker, and we'll be back next week with some action from a questionable slate of Big Ten football. You won't want to miss it.